Hey, Coach Barrett here from Endurance. Hey, one of the things I wanted to share with you and talk to you about is one of the things I do, which is bike fitting. So I've been doing it a while and I use quite a bit of specialized tools, both some high-tech ones and some not so high-tech ones. But for me, I think the whole process and the things I do and the equipment I use is pretty fascinating. So I want to share with you and show you a little bit what I do and a little bit of how I go about doing it. So let's follow me a little bit. And I gotta say, I feel a little bit like Mr. Rogers when I do this stuff. So maybe I should be putting on my red cardigan as we go through this process. I may take you through Coach Barrett's neighborhood. It's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. You know, I bet you people under 30 probably thinking, this guy's a lunatic. But I was kind of thinking, maybe that's a problem with millennials. They didn't grow up watching Mr. Rogers. You know what, Mr. Rogers wouldn't be taking a selfie. Mr. Rogers wouldn't do Snapchat. But anyway, that's a separate issue. First step, first station, the biosize. What I use this for is to get a sense of what your inseam and torso and arm are. And this is just another set of data and information that's going to come up later on. So if I'm fitting somebody and I remember that they have a longer torso, I'm going to fit them a little bit differently than if they have a shorter torso. For me, I got long inseam, short torso, long arms. And so the way I would fit myself would be different from someone who has short inseam, longer torso, shorter arms. It's about weight distribution. So it's just, in and of itself, it's not critical, but it's just one little layer of additional knowledge and information that I'll be using later on. So that leads us to the next step. Come up with me. The assessment. What I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you lay on your back, if you being the subject or the client, I'm going to have you lay on your back here with your feet out, hanging off the edge. And first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to be assessing for leg length difference, both functional or structural. So I'll be looking at you both prone and as you sit up. Other things I'll be looking for is what is your level of hamstring flexibility, what is your level of hip range of motion. These are things that are critical or at least important possible limiters when it comes to you being on the bike and you being able to hold a certain position. So I go through that. The next one is, or next step is, the evaluating your arch and your arches, your foot. Do you have low arches? Do you pronate? Do you have high arches? Do you supinate? Another thing I look for that's very, very critical is what your gait is. Are you a little bit externally rotated? Do you have a straight gait? Are you a little bit pigeon-toed? These are things that will help me gauge how I'm going to set up your cleats, how I'm going to rotate those cleats to accommodate your natural gait. I'll be looking at your arches too, just to see if you pronate a little bit. That's going to influence your pedal stroke, create some instability, which leads me to the next and final assessment, my favorite one, the hardest one, the most challenging one of all, the single leg squat assessment, or we can call it pistol squat. You can also call it pistol squat. So I'm going to demonstrate, and my left side seems to be better because I always demonstrate with my left side, so I'm getting a lot of practice doing this. So we're just going to balance and see how low we can go, and see if there's instability at the foot ankle, see if we have a knee valgus, etc. And again, these are things that are going to help me evaluate your level of function before we even get on the bike. So sometimes it takes about a good 30 minutes, 45 minutes of me interviewing you, doing these assessments before you're even doing a scan. So it's a real key and critical part of the whole process, and I think you need to emphasize the word process because it is a process. So next up, I'll show you something different.